enough. Other rappers is delirious. Yeah, it's really that serious. Better holler if you really feeling me. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna live in abundance. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna. I gotta keep it 100. We gotta stop all the stunting. You know we coming from nothing. Yo, you talking about money, you bluffing. We gotta do something different. We gotta change how we live in. We gotta do better for women. We gotta do better for children. We gotta listen to victims, whether Jewish or Muslim or Christian. It doesn't matter your religion. You gotta stand against the system, or else you just another villain. How you just sitting there chilling?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jamar Jabari, and welcome to another episode of the Jabari Vok podcast, powered by Jabari Vok Media. And I have another great guest. I've always wanted to interview this guy. He's a very, very big, important voice in the left movement that we need. The most censored comedian in America for a reason. Lee Camp, everyone.
What's up? Thanks for the kind words.
Lee Camp, thank you so much for coming on to my little show. This is really amazing. I was very shocked when I DM'd you and you responded. I was like, oh my God, Lee Camp just responded. I had to tell all my activist friends. And it was like, what?
No worries, man. I prefer to do the real podcast as opposed to the big fake ones. So.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, here in Connecticut, you have a very good fan base here. I learned about you from a friend that used to go to Yale, who lives in Appalachians now, and she does a lot of good work in the Appalachians Mountains. Shouts out to Victoria, working class struggle and stuff like that. And she's the one that bought my ticket to go and see you in New Haven, and nice. You put on an amazing freaking show, and I got to take a picture with you, and I was like, man, this guy, what you said about Bernie Sanders literally opened up my mind more about how messed up the politics is with these Democrats and how much they're trying to scapegoat us.
What exactly was it I said at the time, just out of curiosity? Because obviously Bernie has had a bit of a journey. I think he's done some very important things, and I think he also kind of abandoned people when he was touring with Hillary for months and months. So there's different Bernie moments, you know?
Right. Well, to paraphrase, because I don't really know the exact words anymore since it's been so long, you were just saying that there's things I agree with that he says, but I don't think that he's going to make it because of how the structure of the Democratic Party is. And I didn't want to believe you, but you were right.
Yeah, it's funny. It's one of those things. I have a lot of those things where it's like, I pretty much know I'm going to be right about this, you know, prediction or what's happening in a few months or whatever. I don't want to be.
Right.
Like, you know, I mean, I had this past election cycle, I had Jill Stein on the show. I had Cornel West on my show. I had Claudia De La Cruz on my show. Awesome. I very much support all three of them and the ideas they're putting forward and what they stand for and standing against genocide and everything else. I also kind of regularly said, like, look, they're not going to win, but the question is what you can achieve even if they don't win. And, you know, I didn't want that to be true. I just knew it would be true.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm having some tech. There we go. It was a little technical difficulty. Yeah, I voted for Claudia De La Cruz, and it was a very good campaign that she put in. I was a PSL member as well. Right now, I'm taking a hiatus from the party since the ADHD is insane right now. I got to get my ADHD together. Yeah. But Jill Stein did something very historic as well too that people don't know. Like, if she was to get to the 5% vote, do you think that they would take the Green Party a lot more seriously? Because she was at 4.4, and she definitely won the Muslim vote in Dearborn in all of Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some important things that we found out this election, that when the Democrats are going to put forward and support and fund a genocide for over a year, that some people are going to stay home, I think is one lesson learned. But yeah, I mean, define take more seriously. I do think that if she got over 5%, there's certain things that would have happened, like getting on ballots more easily for Green Party, etc. But the Democrat, the internal ruling elite of the Democrats, they definitely take the Green Party seriously to the point that they have worked very hard to destroy anything that the Green Party could begin to build. But they've also done that with several other candidacies like Cornel West and others. Like they take them seriously to the extent that they'll infiltrate them. They'll fund efforts to keep them off ballots. They'll take them to court to keep them off ballots. Basically everything to try and stop democracy is what we'll see again and again.
Yeah, I interviewed Matthew Ho, and that's what happened to him during his run, Green Party.
He ran for, just to refresh for everybody, he ran for Senate in North Carolina, and he was running as a Green Party, and he got the necessary number of signatures, and then basically because the city council was all Democrats, whatever 3-judge panel or whatever it is, they voted that his signatures don't count and he's not on the ballot. Then he took them to court and he successfully got it overturned, but it kind of achieves the purpose, which is he spent his entire campaign fighting them rather than campaigning. I mean,
right. And the liberals are so ridiculous. There was a guy in the comment section on my TikTok that was saying, are you talking about Matthew Ho, the guy that forged all those signatures? So they already with the conspiracies.
Dude, Matthew Ho, I'm lucky enough to know him. He's the sweetest guy and really trying to do good in this world. And right now he's right outside Gaza, and he's been doing reporting from there of just what a horror show it is. And everybody should check out his work.
Yeah, man. I hope he has a safe return as well too. I did see that. And I was trying to see if I get him on the show so he gets back, because ain't no telling what he's gonna experience and talk about. Another question on the election cycle is pertaining to fighting the real left. Do you think the Democrats focus way too much on smearing Jill Stein and Trump, and that's why they've lost the election? Because I've seen that cycle around, especially around Trump, that a lot of people are saying, oh, it's because of Trump, that they kept saying that he's a fascist when he's not, he's a Hitler when he's not, and they should have focused on policy. I feel like it's a scapegoat. I would love to hear your insight.
Yeah, not just a scapegoat. Yeah, I mean, they a few things are going on. One is they can't run on policy because they almost, with very few exceptions, they stand for all the same stuff as the Republicans. If you look at fracking, if you look at fossil fuels, if you look at deportation of immigrants, Biden-Harris deported far more than Trump did. Right. Not that Trump wasn't trying, that just Biden and Harris are better at it. Right. They do the same on climate crisis. Yeah, one of them says it's not real and the other one says it is, but at the end of the day, the actions are exactly identical. Just at every point, funding for nuclear weapons, which is pushing us towards nuclear war. Biden-Harris actually funded that more. They funded police more. They funded Department of Homeland Security more. Again, none of this is saying Trump is Trump just failed to do some of these things as well as Biden-Harris. But the point is just that they don't, the 90% of the core issues of this country, they don't stand for anything different. They stand for capitalism. They stand for the profit-based exploitation of all of us every single day. They stand for one of the largest police forces the world has ever seen, and the largest prison system the world has ever seen in the so-called land of the free. So the idea that they stand for anything different is laughable. And so two things had to happen. One was the Democrats had to not talk about policy issues. They just had to say Trump's awful. And Trump actually had to, in his version of lying, had to pretend Kamala Harris was a completely alternate human being who was a socialist and was going to give away all your money to help the poor, and was was pro-immigrant and was pro-Palestine. Just all these blatantly false things, because he needed to run against something that was not him. Like, Trump didn't want to say, hey, she's the same as me. So he created this fake human being. But back to your question about, did they spend too much time talking about Trump? Absolutely. And Trump, I said this before he even won his first election. I said that Trump has made his entire career, even before it was political, he's made it based on, I mean, his celebrity at least, based on anyone talking about you is a good thing. That doesn't mean he doesn't get upset when people say bad things, but all of the coverage is good. He'd rather have people talking than not talking.
Right.
And he was getting, especially his first term, I mean, and his second run, his third run, flooded with free media, most of it insulting him, but it didn't matter. All that was in everyone's minds was Trump, 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 Trump. And that means when people get in the voting booth, they're thinking Trump, 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 Trump.
Right.
And it didn't matter whether it was positive or negative. They gave, I remember the numbers from the 2016 run that he got 16 times as much coverage as Bernie Sanders when Bernie Sanders was in the race. And he got 10 times as much coverage as Hillary Clinton. And you don't think he's going to win when he gets that kind of coverage? Of course he is.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was saying. And I took a week off of social media, which felt so amazing. People that are listening later on should totally do that. Get a nice little cleanse. Think about yourself, boo-boo. Because it's just so ridiculous. I feel that the Democrats have gotten to the point where now it's going to be a civil war between each other. And I don't know if they're going to split or if they're going to try to move out the progressives. I mean, Jamal Bowman was pushed out by AIPAC. Cori Bush was pushed out by AIPAC as well, too. But AIPAC also supports Trump as well. So it's why can't these liberals see both sides that they're playing and understand that it's literally a one party when it comes to foreign policy and it comes to U.S. imperialism. There's just so many examples that happened this year that shows you that. It's clear as day now.
There's a lot of cognitive dissonance. I think the idea for many that both of these parties are essentially the same thing is too horrifying. They want to fit into polite society. They want to believe that at the heart of it, the empire is good. They want to believe that, most of our war efforts have been, we were trying to do right, even though we accidentally killed 6 million people with the war on terror. According to Brown University's cost of war, 4.5 to 6 million. Yeah. And I think they're just too afraid to step outside and see the light, when in fact, it's that's where you find freedom. You find freedom when you actually look at reality, call it what it is. But on top of that, the only way anything's ever going to change, even if it seems like it's not right now, is for people to accurately diagnose the problem. Right. You can't sit there and act like it's not happening and expect things to become somehow positive.
Right.
We live in an entire system that is exploitative. It sucks away your life force. It sucks away your labor, your time. It destroys the environment, and it enriches a tiny number of people to such a degree that it's unfathomable. I mean, 5 human beings in America have the same amount of wealth as the bottom 50% of the humans. Five white dudes have the same wealth as 50% of all of Americans. It's just an utterly unequal, insane system. And, one day, long after we're gone, and when people look back on this time, they'll just look at it as unhinged madness. There's no other way to view this.
I say that we're the television Romans. Well, in this point, we are the social media Romans. Everyone's going to see how we were.
Weirdly, Elon Musk and some of the others were posting photos of Rome and photos of Washington, D.C., saying D.C. is Rome. But the reason they were posting them was a positive. They were like, look, we're like ancient Rome. We're an empire. We're awesome. And I'm like, you do know how it ended for ancient Rome, right? You know how this movie goes?
Last question on the Democrats. Do you think the Democratic Party is dead? I've heard that term being thrown around. Are they dead? Can they revitalize?
In terms of a party for any kind of change, yes, they're dead. in terms of what the ruling elite want them for, which is a theatrics that you somehow have a choice between the two sides, and each for every 2 or 4 years you really need to think about that choice. That theatrics is quite useful to the ones who are exploiting and extracting this system. So in that way, they're not dead. They're very useful. So they're not dead in the sense that it's not like the mainstream media is not going to stop talking about them or anything. They're dead in terms of a party for change or good or positive or a better world. Yeah.
Yeah. And even like we had a conversation about FDR, and how much a lot of people nowadays say all these great things about him. And yes, he did help out with the New Deal, and all these other progressive these other progressive policies. But the issue is that Jim Crow still was strong, and and he didn't do anything about that. I mean, it was to the point that like police would release a guy out and let the public know, oh, he's here, and then they'll go and grab him and lynch him. And that was the type of culture, that apartheid type of culture. And you see that that coalition that between the apartheid in Israel, and how the Democrats are here saying that, oh, we're the most moral and all these things. Like it literally just it's a comparison of the past of just how much full of shit they could be. And I think with 15 million progressives that they saying staying home, I hope they wake up, but it doesn't seem they get it. The View seems to just be the Democratic Party spearhead. Like,
I mean,
all this nonsense.
Their entire purpose for being is to not get it. Like, because if they were to get it, if they were to really take in and understand and change their thinking in terms of what this world is and what we're seeing, then they would support a system that does not enrich them. They would support a system that helps all Americans and is not funneling money to the richest people in the world and in the country. But of course, that's not why they're there. They are there to do the opposite. They are there to hold on to the status quo. They are there to make sure that we keep having this system that extracts 95% of Americans and feeds it to the 5%. That is their job. That's why they're there. And, they say the estimates are that 1 out of every humans roughly is a sociopath, which it's fine. I'm not saying they all need to be imprisoned. Sociopaths can function in society. But our problem is we have a system that uniquely rewards them. I mean, all of these people, Donald Trump, Antony Blinken, Joe Biden, Elon Musk, all of them, they're all sociopaths. They don't pause for a second about harming other human beings. And rather than them being sidelined in society, like, oh, that's dangerous, they are actually put at the top of society. They are the richest among us. They are in the most powerful offices among us because they're willing to stomp on all human beings to achieve whatever aims they have, which are always power and money. So it's a completely inverted moral universe, unfortunately, that we're in right now.
Yeah, very well said. I totally agree with that, Lee. I want to take it back real quick on you. What got you started to be a comedian, and also were you a comedian first before journalism, or did journalism and being a comic just mush together?
Yeah, I was oh man, and let me get to that in a second. Let me go back to FDR for a minute. I wanted to
yeah. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm glad you brought up FDR. He did some important things. I'm a big fan of things like Social Security. Many of those things were not his idea. There's a woman who came up with a lot of these and pushed him to do that. And of course, I can't remember her name, which is kind of the point, I guess, of American history. You don't remember the women behind the ideas. But anyway, that aside, he kind of saved capitalism. He saved an exploitative system. And I often support things that might help people. Like, I support a universal basic income because it would help people tomorrow, even though it may save capitalism for a while, like if it's on the verge of collapse. But, so it's not that I'm opposed to the New Deal, but I think people need to realize that FDR was not an anti-capitalist. He was not a socialist. He and various business interests of America realized that things were going to collapse, that there was going to be essentially the U.S. equivalent of a Bolshevik revolution. Right. And the only way to stop that, many of them believed, some of them hated this idea, but many of them believed, was to give the people a bunch of perks for being part of the society, to give them Social Security, to give them, labor rights and weekends and things. And those are all positives, but it did save this kind of unfettered, insane capitalism that is ravaging the world. It basically made it possible for workers to survive. And for a while, when America was an industrial country, many workers, mainly white workers, did quite well. You could have one guy funding a whole family with his one job, 9 to 5.
Right.
But that was a very limited time, 30, 40 years that actually existed for white Americans. And it really is it's the Band-Aid on the monster or whatever, but, to mix my metaphors, I guess it's a slight ankle bracelet on the monster that's ravaging everything. But so it's not that it's a negative. I support the New Deal, but let's just know what it was.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely a good point.
Okay. So then I avoided that. Now I got to go back to the journalism question. I needed to be taking notes. I very much wanted to be a comedian first. I never thought of myself as a journalist. I started writing comedy at 12, and it was not political comedy. I was not political. I started performing at 17. I knew I was going to be a stand-up comic pretty much within a year or two of that. And I went ahead and finished college just because I thought my parents would kill me if I didn't. And then I moved to New York City and did stand-up comedy for 20 years, basically. But it became, over those 20 years, it became more and more political. It grew, and I became more of an activist off stage. I felt like this world needs to change, and I then started incorporating it on stage. And ultimately that resulted in a successful YouTube show and then a TV show that I wrote and starred in for 8 years. But at the same time, it also I knew it would not result in me being the face of HBO or something. I knew that I would be kept off the mainstream airwaves, and sure enough, I had a TV show, but that TV show was on the only channel that would ever allow me to do that, RT America. And that's, now the U.S. has sanctioned that into oblivion. Yeah. And I am, in many regards, the most censored comedian in America. Most people are like, well, what about, that's not true, Dave Chappelle. And I'm like, okay, first of all, Dave Chappelle has one of the most lucrative and widely seen deals in all of the history of comedy on Netflix. Yeah. He every special he puts out is seen by half the country. He in no way is being censored or suppressed. Right. In fact, quite the opposite. He has deals just thrown at him. Right. Whereas my world is that my main YouTube channel has been banned around the world. I have a newer YouTube channel that's just shadow banned, so it's still up there. I hope people will check it out.
Moment of Clarity, right?
Yeah, youtube.com/Moment of Clarity, and the show nowadays is called Dangerous Ideas. But my Spotify podcast was banned. I now have a new one, and my Twitter is shadow banned. My Facebook is extremely shadow banned, even though it used to be my biggest page with 330,000 followers, but now, I post something and it's seen by 0.001% of those followers. So it's just kind of an endless game of whack-a-mole. I joined TikTok only, last year, and I used it for 2 months, and I was doing pretty well. And then they banned me with no no appeal and no reason. So
Yeah, and, and I wanted to that was a good segue because that's what I wanted to ask you real quick about. That was because you were like one of the first before Alex Jones that was dealing with all this. And now there's no comparison, by the way. I'm not comparing you at all with that crazy guy.
No, but what I said actually when I was dealing with some of it beforehand, but when Alex Jones was deplatformed, the first thing that happened to him, I had said, and this is very different than the lawsuits that have been brought against him, but I said that if they can just deplatform this guy because they don't like what he's saying, meanwhile, mainstream media, of course, is manufacturing consent for the death of millions. If they can just deplatform this guy because they don't like his, I don't like what he's saying either, but they're going to come after us next. And I said that to leftists. I said it to anyone who was outside the mainstream. And sure enough, they did. Like Alex Jones was a test balloon. And then many important pages on Facebook were just banned outright, like antiwar.com and stuff like that, Free Thought Project and all that stuff. Mine was just shadow banned, but many were just banned outright. And sure enough, Alex Jones was kind of the first little test balloon to see how people would react. Yeah. And I tried to say, like, look, I hate everything or most of the things that man says, but it's going to be us next. And it was.
Right. But there was even with in the midst of you being shadow banned, I still credit you for a lot of the great things for the left. Like when you interviewed Brian Becker, that was a very, very amazing interview. I think that was like one of the first times I've ever seen, because I know him a little bit since I joined his party and did like 7-8 years with the PSL, and I think that helped catapult a lot of the socialist talk besides the Bernie Sanders. They're showing true socialism because you were one of the first to bring him on to such a big enough platform. And now look at them. They got Breakthrough News and all these different type of platforms that are garnering so much likes and views. And, they might get destroyed by the media one day too. I'm pretty sure they're already plotting on how to take down Breakthrough News.
Well, actually, what funny you mentioned that. What just happened this week, which is aimed partially at Breakthrough News and some others, is the House passed that it's the anti-nonprofit bill that will allow Trump. It's funny that a bunch of Democrats signed on to it as well. Will allow Trump to point at any nonprofit, say, "Oh, you support terrorism. They don't have to give any evidence or any proof or anything. You supported a terrorist organization, and therefore you lose your nonprofit status," which for many of them would be a death knell in and of itself. But on top of losing your nonprofit status, they can do plenty of other things, such as make sure you don't receive any Google traffic and things like that. So they can really, put these organizations in a coffin by this new bill. Now, it hasn't passed the Senate yet. Many people are lobbying to stop it, but
thank God.
Many believe that bill is aimed at a few organizations, one of them being Breakthrough News, because they and various PSL organizations, connected organizations, because some of them are nonprofits, and this would basically make it impossible for them to operate.
Yeah. Very, very, very weird how that bill is now in fruition before Trump gets into office. What do you think about this administration? Do you think these guys are going to get fired coming in this new administration? Do you think they're going to last? There's a lot of contradictories of what Trump ran on. Like, of course, he did in 2016, talk about I'm going to drain the swamp, and then he brought the swamp back in, and it seems like the swamp is being revitalized again. You got little man Marco Rubio in conversation, Elon Musk, billionaire. Like, what is actually going on? Like, what do you think is going to be the prediction? And for people that's listening, we have to remember a lot of the stuff that they tried to do. The backlash was so great, they had to backpedal on it last time during Trump's term, like for even banning trans people in the military. That didn't work out. So I just wanted to hear your prediction of what do you think we should expect.
Well, I mean, in terms of whether he'll fire these, who knows? Trump does whatever he does. Some of it's Some of it's lunacy, some of it's meant to enrich himself, some of it's meant to just give him more power. But I'd say one of the clearest places you can look for how the Trump administration is going to behave is Elon Musk has been tweeting a series of tweets celebrating Argentina. Now, Argentina has a far-right, unhinged president that the U.S. helped create a lawfare coup to get him in there, Javier Milei, and he calls himself an anarcho-capitalist, whatever that is. It's a meaningless term, but basically, he's gutting the government and selling Argentina for pieces, for pieces and parts to the richest bidders. So it's taking a country and selling it to the rich. And this has been done a few times in Latin America and various countries, many of them facilitated by the United States. And Elon Musk and other far right wingers are posting excitedly about the stock returns of various companies in Argentina and how good maybe their GDP is or whatever these numbers are. And the reason is because when you sell a country for parts, when you say, hey, this forest that we were keeping, green because it makes for a better world in Argentina, we're selling it to this one guy who's going to get millions and millions of dollars by chopping down all the trees. Well, that looks really good on a stock portfolio. The company does really well. Their stock goes up. Investors, maybe, which is a tiny percentage of human beings in any country, they do well. So that's what Elon Musk is celebrating and saying this is so great. But if you actually look anywhere outside of stock prices, the country is collapsing. Over 50% of Argentinians are now in poverty. And much of that has happened since he got into office, since Milei got into office. There are mass protests around the country. Basically, it is, I am going to sell to rich people this country at the expense of everyone else. And much of the country will collapse into poverty. It doesn't matter because the rich are getting richer. And Elon Musk and his friends and the Trump administration are saying, this is awesome. This is what we want. We want to sell as much of America to the rich, and we want the American people to be in extreme poverty because they don't care. It is ruled by sociopathy. And, of course, there's plenty of this that's gone on with the Democrats as well, NAFTA being a big example.
Right.
But anyway, I think that's a lot of what they'll do. They're talking about various ways to kind of gut much of the federal government. This doesn't mean I love everything the federal government's ever done, but the gutting they're talking about is mainly things that do help people, like giving people education and stuff. But I suppose there's probably some political philosophers out there that go, look, we need the end of the U.S. empire, and Trump and his cronies are so greedy and incompetent that they're facilitating the end of the U.S. empire. So
Right.
maybe there's a positive in having just a bunch of ravenous, greedy idiots trying to run things.
Right. Oh my God, it's so ridiculous. And just like how X is now. I mean, don't get me wrong, Twitter was very, very problematic as well too. But like X it's like, let's just give all the white supremacists everything. Rebecca Jones, I don't know if you know her story. She fled from Florida. She used to work for the government, and DeSantis, the fascist he is, had the SWAT team on her. She's a whistleblower. She was trying to show exactly how many people actually died from COVID, and they were covering it up and stuff. He sent the SWAT team on her. He tried to literally get her in prison, and now she moved up here in the East. She's a whistleblower. I don't know why the CNN is not talking about this. She's going to be on my show next week.
The FBI also raided Scott Ritter, a well-known journalist now, used to be a UN weapons inspector, and
they're cracking down. Like you got Omali Yatela, his case.
The Yahoo 3. I just had two of them on him. I had Chairman Yeshitela and Penny Hess on my show last week.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I had him on my show too. That's dope that he's still getting like really good interviews, because I was hoping that he does, because his story needs to be told. And it's like none of these things are mainstream at all, and they need to be mainstream. And I feel like the media is doing this all on purpose, so they don't show just how things are going, how repressive and fascist this country is literally becoming. And I never wanted to use that term, because I thought we were past that with after Jim Crow was abolished. But I think we are moving into a period where, like Lenin said, fascism, well, to paraphrase, is the late stage of capitalism. So I think we have a very crazy road to go on.
Well, it's one of those things where if you're of a privileged class, either white of a certain wealth, and I don't mean wealthy, but I just mean middle class or something, you can kind of live in a world and pretend this is a free country and it's not fascism at all. But of course, if you're in another class that is largely the 2 point whatever million people locked up every day in this country, in the largest prison state in the world, if you are regularly have cops walking up and down your block, which are just roided up men with guns, it's a different world in many ways. I mean, fascism is already here in many ways, but for middle and upper class, largely white, but it doesn't have to be just white. But they can look at their world and say, "Oh no, this isn't fascism. This is freedom."
Yeah. I definitely noticed that correlation with especially in the middle class and Black communities. Those are definitely words of headbutting that I've had with my own community. It's like, you guys just make me so mad. You're so out of touch. I've had those little conversations.
Yeah, and you can look at a bunch of these examples that kind of show a taste of what the reality actually is. Like the report that just came out that in Washington, D.C., 94% of all use of force incidents by police in Washington, D.C. are against Black and brown folks. So it's like almost the entirety of every time a cop physically attacks someone, whether there's moments that this is justified but mainly unjustified, it is almost entirely not against white people. And there's multiple reasons for this, but you read farther down in the article and they go 50% or something close to 50% of all the police in Washington, D.C. are not white, are Black or brown. Well, it doesn't matter really. They're still holding up a racist policing system.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you put and this goes for the new woke trend of every White House press corps representative speaking to the press, every UN ambassador from the United States voting to veto ceasefires so that more children get bombed. None of them are white. They're all not white, because it makes people somehow, mainly liberals, feel a little bit better that the person voting to keep bombing children is not white. It's okay. It's a Black woman, then it's fine that we keep bombing children. It really is just a dystopian, like, I don't know, political cartoon or something.
It's so clever with their smoke and mirrors, because people fall for it so easily. Especially whenever it's a Black general that gets appointed, and my community will celebrate that because they're like, "Oh, we finally in there, and stuff like that." And I'm just like, oh, he's gonna kill so many people. Y'all just proud that he's Black.
Mr. Raytheon, Lloyd Austin.
Right, Lloyd Austin. Oh my God, man. So just last question, because I know you're a very busy guy and I do not want to take up more of your time. We are in a Cold War 2.0 at this point, right? I guess we can officially say that now, after Russia showed what they can do in response to Biden clearing for Ukraine to attack Russia with long-range missiles. Do you see a light at the end of this tunnel? Because I cannot see a light at the end of this tunnel, especially after hearing Putin's speech, his full speech, him threatening the U.S., which is very reasonable to me. I know some Americans would not like me saying that, but the man has a point.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. is pushing just closer and closer to nuclear war. Everything they can do to just be on the brink of nuclear war, it really is horrific. And for those who, I imagine most of your viewers are pretty informed, but for those who aren't informed and go, well, it was Putin who invaded and it's his fault. Right. Well, you don't actually understand the history then. The U.S. created a coup in Ukraine in 2014, the Maidan coup. Even the New York Times, you can still go read the article, said the CIA was in Ukraine, training Ukrainians, had, small bases on the border of Russia in Ukraine. We were all up in Ukraine prior to 2014, but definitely starting heavily after 2014. And then on top of that, the war didn't begin when Putin invaded. The war began when basically neo-Nazis were murdering thousands of culturally Russian people in the Donbass region. Anyway, right. All to get past all that, let's just say that Biden seems to be rushing for the brink of nuclear war. I think the administration, I don't know that he makes any decisions anymore, but I think his administration is just trying to get things as bad as possible in the proxy war in Ukraine before they leave office, because they're worried Trump might create peace. And again, I despise Donald Trump. He is a disgusting, repulsive human being. But at the same time, because of some of his isolationist tendencies, he does seem to want to end the proxy war in Ukraine, as did Henry Kissinger. So this is not just a crazy lefty viewpoint. And it seems that Biden and the British and many others are just trying to make this as bad as possible so that it can't be easily undone after Trump gets into office. But yeah, well, you asked about light at the end of the tunnel. I think the light at the end of the tunnel is that much of the world, the proxy war in Ukraine has largely backfired for the United States. I mean, the sanctions against Russia have boomeranged largely against Europe. Right. But it also has sent Russia running into the arms of China. It has heavily sped up the creation of BRICS, because many countries around the world have seen the U.S. stealing the funds of Russia that were not in Russia, stealing the funds of Venezuela that were not in Venezuela. And many countries around the world have gone, well, we got to get a system that's outside of the U.S. dollar, outside of the SWIFT system. And they're creating that. BRICS is working on that. And BRICS is now far more powerful and influential than it was. And, they higher GDP than the G7.
Yeah. So that's crazy.
Yeah. So I think the light at the end of the tunnel is that a lot of the world is no longer just, bending over to everything the U.S. wants, and finding the will and the strength and the, cooperation to stand up against a U.S. empire that has killed millions. And you see this in African countries as well, the ones that have kicked out the French and kicked out the U.S., right? Niger and Burkina Faso and some others. So you are seeing this again and again.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way. That made me feel better, because just reading these articles and hearing from the public, it just seems that we just don't, because we should be freaking out right now, but no one's freaking out. No one's really freaking out right now. No one's really worried. And I'm just so shocked that people aren't worried. You can't survive nuclear winter, people. You really can't. It's over once it happens. The Earth will be fine. The Earth will be okay. The Earth's going to push all that out eventually.
Yeah, no, it is a nice. That's a nice positive thought. Is we're only here for the blink of the eye. So right. if we if we destroy all the humans, then the earth will be quite happy, and the fish will be doing a lot better. The birds will be so happy. Yeah.
Right? Well, Lee Camp, thank you so much for coming on to my podcast. This is really awesome. I hope to get you on in the near future, like next year or something like that. And please, guys, check out his show.
Thank you. And I do just real quick want to mention my new podcast that I created called Just Comedy. And it is all my comedy segments, because obviously, as you've seen in this interview, I do a lot of serious analysis as well. Mm-hmm. So this is just my comedy, and it obviously deals some with significant issues as well. But I think people should check it out. I think everybody really enjoy it. It's on all the podcast platforms for you to listen to, and it is called Just Comedy. You probably have to look up Just Comedy with Lee Camp. And if anybody forgets any of the links or things I've said, it's you can go to linktree.com/Lee Camp. I got my live streams every week. I got a lot going on.
Yeah, I'll make sure I'll put that in the link in the description when I release this podcast tonight, around 6 o'clock or 7. One of those. I got to figure out which is a good slot. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and please keep doing what you're doing. Do not change. Don't pull a Jimmy Dore.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that, and I'd love for you to keep in touch and keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lee. And to everyone that's listening, have a really good day and enjoy your weekend.
Blank period, on my black, brown, and indigenous. Gotta holler if you really feeling this. Gotta holler if you really real enough. Other rappers is delirious. Yeah, it's really that serious. Better holler if you really feeling me. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna live in abundance. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna. I gotta keep it 100. We gotta stop all the stunting. You know we coming from nothing. Yo, you talking about money, you bluffing. We gotta do something different. We gotta change how we live in. We gotta do better for women. We gotta do better for children. We gotta listen to victims, whether Jewish or Muslim or Christian. It doesn't matter your religion. You gotta stand against the system, or else you just another villain. How you just sitting there chilling?